Hey everybody, it's great to see you today. Today is July 24th, and this is Living Power, your online Bible study. We are in the book of Isaiah, and we're going to cover a couple more chapters today, about 44 to 47 in Isaiah. We're looking at prophecy. We're going to see Jesus today, and I know many of you just love looking and finding him in the Old Testament. We're going to do that again today. And we're going to talk about four proclamations. There really are four proclamations in today's reading that I want to pull out for you. Some relate to our past, and some naturally relate to our future, and we'll explain that as we go. The first and easiest one is the proclamation about Cyrus. He's the king of Persia. At the time of this writing, it was somewhere between 701 and 686 BC. We're really not sure when this was written, but it probably was written during that time period by Isaiah. And the king of Persia actually defeats Babylon in 539 BC and decrees that the Jews can go home in 538 BC. So it is 150 years, maybe 200 years, we're not really sure exactly, before these things will happen. And I'd like to turn your attention to Isaiah 44, verse 28. This is the first mention of the king of Persia's actual name, Cyrus. And it says here, "When I say of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, he will do as I say." The Lord is simply saying, I rose this man to power and gave him this seat of power at this time for this purpose, and he will command, rebuild Jerusalem, and he will say, restore the temple, and that's exactly what happened. We'll read in the history books later on about the decree to return home, but when we get to Ezra, we'll read about that, and Nehemiah about building the wall around Jerusalem. But this, I just wanted you to see, had been proclaimed many, many years before. It's actually mentioned again in Isaiah 45, verse 13. God's giving us a little bit more background information. He's saying, I will raise up Cyrus to fulfill my righteous purpose, and I will guide his actions. He will restore my city and free my captive people without seeking a reward for himself. I, the Lord of heaven's armies, have spoken. And of course, that happened in 538 BC. Wouldn't it be weird if you were the king of Persia? Let's say you're Cyrus for a minute. What would it be like for the first time you heard that a book of prophecy had been written about you hundreds of years before? There was a first time. He was either a child, or he was an adolescent, or maybe he was an adult. We don't really know, but can you imagine being Cyrus and hearing that for the first time, that something was written about you? What would you do? What would you think? You'd probably think, well, where is it? Do we have a copy? Can I read it? And you would have been taken a scroll, and the scroll would have been Isaiah 45. And you would have read this with your name right there, and God would have been speaking to you through this. Wouldn't that have been weird? I'm sure at some point Cyrus, you assume Cyrus would have read this. But we're not exactly sure, but that would have been weird. Now, the second proclamation we want to talk about today is a proclamation that is made about Jesus, and many of you I know have heard this before. You've heard it in church, where every knee will bend, every knee will bow, and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Have you remembered that? Remember that from church? That is actually in Isaiah 45, verse 23. And that is spoken here by Isaiah, that will happen. And of course, that has not happened yet. This is a future time, but it will happen in the millennial period. I love verse 24. It says, the people will declare, they're speaking about Israel, the Lord is the source of all my righteousness and my strength, my saving power and my might, my righteousness and my strength. Isn't it wonderful to be reading about Israel and the days when they will be saved, and the days when the Spirit will be poured out upon them, for they are a chosen people, and God will not let them get away. He has a wonderful blessing for the nation of Israel. This, verse 23, every knee will bend, every tongue confess Jesus Christ is Lord, is about, of course, the Gentiles. This is even for us. And Israel will recognize and give him praise, verse 24, but the Gentiles will as well, verse 23. Love that. Here's a third proclamation, proclamation about Babylon. And this was the nation. It's in Isaiah 47. I'd like to turn your attention to verse 1 to 15. Basically, I'll summarize for you. God is saying, I let you, the nation of Babylon, take my people, Judah and Benjamin, the southern kingdom. But you were too cruel. You even oppressed the elderly, it says in verse 5. Then God goes on to say, and this is where it gets a little bit scary because it, well, let me read it to you and you can see if any of that reminds you of another country that's very close to heart. I won't mention any names, but verse 8 says, listen to this, you pleasure-loving kingdom. Of course, God is speaking about Babylon, but could he be speaking of another nation that exists today? Living at ease and feeling secure. You say, I am the only one and there is no other. I will never be a widow or lose my children. That just means, nothing bad will happen to me. We're protected on our borders. We're a strong kingdom, etc. Well, both these things will come upon you in a moment, widowhood and loss of your children. Yes, these calamities will come upon you despite all your witchcraft and magic. And of course, in this case, the source or the cause of their demise is their lack of trust, faith, and religious practices of God. It was the idolatry that was in the nation here in Babylon. And I'm just seeing, I wonder if you see too, there's just a warning. Even in verse 7, it says, you did not reflect on your actions or think about their consequences. And I think about, our country with separation of church and state and prayer in schools and the whole, the different theological decisions that we make here in our country, and often it's not to side with God, even taking in God we trust off of money or off of our license plates. You just have to wonder, what are we thinking when we're doing these things? And the warning that's kind of subliminal here, it's direct, but yet I do think that there's a warning here for us in the reading today. Feeling secure, living at ease, feeling secure in your wickedness, verse 10. That's a great warning for all of us. Now the fourth proclamation really is, I'm going to say, from God to anyone who will hear. And I want to go back to the very beginning of the reading today, July 24th, where in Isaiah 44, verse 6, it says, this is what the Lord says, I am the first and the last. There is a name, a Hebrew name for God that means the first and the last. I'm scared to pronounce it because I know I won't pronounce it right, but Rishon Va'acharon is probably how it's pronounced. And I just wanted to share with you what this name of God means, if we could just think about this for a minute. To be first and the last, it means He is bigger and greater than anything else. He is even beyond anything else that exists. He is infinite, without limits. He is not limited by space or time. He is exceedingly great in excellence and capacity. Space cannot hold Him. He is everywhere. Time cannot hold Him, for He is not bound by time. He's excellent. He's perfect. And He's limitless. This is all wrapped up in the one name for God, being the first and the last. This God is the one that is saying to us, I tell you what I'm going to do. I share with you my plans. And that's repeated in our reading today in chapter 45, verse 19, 46:10, 48:3. And I love in 45:19 where he says, if you seek me, you'll find me. And I wouldn't have told you to seek me if it wasn't possible to find me. I just wouldn't do that. And I love that aspect of him. I love God's just showing us his vulnerability in essence when he just kind of says these things. I said to seek and that you would be able to find. And I can be found is what he's saying. In 45 verse 7, he's saying, I send good and bad times into your life. I'm the one who's doing this. I made the world the way it is. Why are you fooling around with your idols? Why are you asking questions in verse 10 like, why was I made this way? Why was I born this way? Why did this have to happen to me? It's almost like he's coming against it when we kind of say, oh, woe is me, or we get down on ourselves, or we're just down on our lot. And God is saying, I'm in control. I made the world this way. I made you this way. And in verse 24, he says, I am the source of your righteousness and your strength. Why, oh, why are you wasting your energy, your mind, your strength on worthless idols? And sometimes I know when we read about Israel and their idolatry, it can be difficult to relate. There is a book, contemporary book, that's called Counterfeit Gods, and it is a book that helped me to understand contemporary idols that we in our society today trust in and fall prey to. So if you want to learn more about recognizing idols that might be in your life, that would be a good place to start. It's almost like God here in chapter 47 is showing us an attitude that he doesn't like and that we should disregard. And it borders on idolatry. He mentions thinking that your friends will continue to help you. Thinking, and I'm paraphrasing now, thinking that we know enough, that we can outsmart the stock market, for instance. Thinking that we're strong enough and our army is strong enough that we'll never have war inside of our borders. Thinking that we're really good and smart and good at our job and we have this glowing resume that we'll never need to use it again, that we'll always have a job. It's these attitudes, I believe, that he is warning us about in his speaking to Israel that we can really take to our heart today. This message is for someone, I believe, that's listening to this tape. And I might not even exactly know what your circumstance is, but I really believe that this is something that we need to speak about today. God is saying in 47:14, these things, this is not where your help is coming from. I have rescued you for my sake. I have chosen you. I have called you for my reputation. And I do these things in your life, whether they're good or whether they're bad. Anytime you are in prosperity, it's because of my blessing. Anytime you're in want or in need, it may be because of my discipline. But God is saying, I love you through it, no matter what. And he is calling us to trust in him with a pure heart and motive, and to, I believe, seek our hearts and see if there could be any counterfeit gods that we in our lives today are relying on. So I'm just going to stop. I don't think I can say it any better than that. I think I'm going to go ahead and quit today, and I will just leave you with this beautiful verse, Isaiah 46:24. The people, can it be you, will declare, the Lord is the source of all my righteousness and all my strength, and all of my blessing and all of my solutions. And I need not rely on anything else. Well, I pray this has been a blessing to you today. I pray that you'll stay with me as we continue in the book of Isaiah. Blessings to you and your family. I'll see you again tomorrow. Shalom.